So in this section we are going to see about how the microwave frequency and the impedance can be measured. So first section we'll see on microwave frequency measurement. Here we are going to learn about three methods. First one is the direct method using the wave meter, that is by using the frequency meter which we employ in our microwave lab. Second one using the slotted line, that is the indirect method. We also know what is a slotted line. We have come across the slotted line in our microwave lab. Okay, but that is an indirect method for the measurement of microwave frequency. And another electronic method is the harmonic oscillator method. So now we will see these methods one by one. We are familiar with this component in microwave lab. This is a frequency meter in which directly we can read the frequency which is employed in our lab. And this is a DRF type of frequency meter usually we employ in lab. So this top part is movable. So when you move this top part, you can see the variations, okay, of the readings. Now this is a cross section of a frequency meter. There is a shorting plunger. So when we rotate this top part, the shorting plunger will move up and down. For example, if you rotate this top part in the clockwise direction, this shorting plunger will come down. And if you rotate it in the other way, in the anti-clockwise way, this shorting plunger will go up. So what happens in this cross section, what we understand is that the length of the cavity is going to vary. By now we are thorough with the concept of a cavity resonator. So when the length changes, the frequency also will get changed. Okay. So we know that this frequency meter is to be inserted in a microwave test bench. For example, here we'll be having a source, isolator, attenuators, etc. After that only we insert usually a frequency meter and then we connect it to output, say VSWR meter or whatever it is, DSO. So what happens, usually we employ X band of frequency, that is ranging from 8 to 12 gigahertz in a microwave lab. So when our input signal is going to match with this resonant frequency of this particular gap, there will be signal absorption. Okay, so that is why this type of wave meter method, it is also called as absorption type wave meter. So as you can see in a microwave test bench, here I have employed a Klystron microwave test bench. You can also use gun diodes. Okay, so in this, where is the position of frequency meter? It is coming after the source, isolator and variable attenuator. At the output part, we are having the frequency meter, and here we have a VSWR meter which shows the deflections. Okay, so when we are doing the tuning of our wave meter or the frequency meter, when we tune this, as we have seen in the cross section, the length of the cavity is going to vary. So when we are doing this in a microwave test bench, suppose if a signal is coming, say of we'll take it in the X band range. So say a 10 gigahertz signal is coming. Okay, if that frequency is going to match with the resonant frequency of the cavity, okay, which we have set up by means of moving the plunger, that is we are actually rotating the top part of frequency meter and varying the length. So when the frequency, resonant frequency of that cavity is matching with the incoming frequency, there will be a drop in the signal. In the output part, if you connect a DSO, you can observe that you are getting a dip in the signal. The signals will not be fully absorbed, it will be only partially absorbed. So such a wave meter at resonance is called as absorption type wave meter. Also you can observe the dip in the display unit, that is the power meter, which is connected at the output side of waveguide. By using the power meter or DSO, you can see the dip. So such type of wave meters are having great accuracy. So this is a direct way by which we could measure the frequency in the microwave lab. Next we are going to see how to measure the frequency by using a slotted section. Okay, so by now you should be familiar with what is a slotted line. We are going to use a probe coupling here, okay, and we are going to insert it at the center of our waveguide. So usually when you consider the dominant mode, that is say TE10 mode, the maximum electric field component is going to occur at the center, which you have already learned. So at that point we are going to do this probe coupling, okay, and when we are going to vary this, obviously we can measure what will be the deviation by the VSWR meter. Now if it is not a matched load from this termination side, that is if the impedance of this load and the waveguide is not going to match, obviously we know there will be standing wave produced. That is, there will be standing waves, reflection from the load side and the production of standing waves. Okay, so we could measure all this by using such a setup. We could measure what will be the VSW, V max, V minimum, etc. by using this particular slotted section. So we use now this slotted section to determine what will be our frequency. Here we have to understand that we are having a crystal detector probe which is being connected to the standing wave indicator. So these are in order. This is a microwave test bench. So about the slotted line carriage, it is a microwave instrument which can be used for measuring of wavelength, VSWR, impedance, reflection coefficient, return loss measurement, etc. So we know how it is being inserted in a microwave test bench, or how it is looking like, what are the components of it, and we have learned that we are using the probe coupling, okay, in the cavity resonator of the waveguide. So it has got a coaxial electric field probe which is going to penetrate inside a rectangular waveguide slotted in sections from the outer wall. So the probe will be able to transverse a longitudinal narrow slot and locate the standing waves V maxima and V minima along the line giving VSWR. So we are inserting or doing the probe coupling at the center of the waveguide, and we are going to have a movable part. That is, when we move it, obviously you can see the deflections in your power meter. When the load is not matched to the waveguide, a VSWR will be set up. So we can locate, or we can note down all these values. What will be the maximum, V maximum, what will be the V minimum. So thus it is going to give the VSWR whole along the waveguide. You have to remember that in this slotted line method, directly we are not going to get the frequency. We are going to get the wavelength, and then we are going to relate it to frequency by the standard equation. Okay, so the standing waves obtained are measured to know the transmission line imperfection, which is necessary to have a knowledge on impedance mismatch for effective transmission. So the slotted line helps in measuring the standing wave ratio of a microwave device. So by moving the slotted line, we are having a crystal detector at the end which is connected to our power meter. So we could know what are the value of this Vmax or V minimum along the whole waveguide. So it gives us the standing wave ratio. Okay. Now we know that the distance or the D minimum between the successive minima of voltage standing wave is the half the guide wavelength lambda g by 2. So frequency can be determined from the relations. That is, we have to measure two successive minimas. So by using this probe coupling of the slotted line, we can move it along the waveguide and take down the values for Vmax, V minimum, etc. So if you are taking two successive values of the V minimum, it will be what? Half the guide wavelength. Okay, so then we could relate this guide wavelength and the operating wavelength by the standard equation which we have already studied in our previous semesters, and A is the larger internal dimension of the waveguide. So by using the slotted line, first of all we determine what? The V maximum, V minimums, and the distance between the successive minima gives the half of the guide wavelength, and then we relate by using this standard expression what will be the operating wavelength. So once you know this operating wavelength, you could easily relate it to the operating frequency. This is the indirect method of measurement of frequency in microwave lab. This method of frequency measurement, we call it as an electronic technique. It is not much used in the lab like that of the slotted line or the direct method. But here it is an accurate method but a little expensive. That is what here we do is that we are having unknown frequency which we have to measure. So we take a known frequency by using a low frequency generator. This is our known frequency, and with the help of harmonic generator we generate the harmonics of the already known frequency, and with the help of mixer we are going to combine this unknown frequency and this harmonic generated lower frequency, and then the difference in frequency is now going to be amplified and measured. So we'll get an idea of what will the value of this unknown frequency. That is what is done in the electronic technique of frequency measurement. So this technique is accurate but expensive. High frequency heterodyne systems can be used. The unknown frequency is compared with the harmonics of a known lower frequency by use of a low frequency generator, a harmonic generator and a mixer. So the mixer can give the difference. So the difference between the frequencies can be amplified and measured. So by now we are familiar with the three methods of measuring the microwave frequency. Now this section we are going to see about the microwave impedance measurement. We'll see the two methods. First one by using a slotted line and second one by using a reflectometer. We will see one by one. Now first we will see about using the slotted line method to measure the impedance of microwave. Now we have to understand that actually by using a slotted line we are just going to understand about the nature of impedance. That is whether the impedance is capacitive or inductive in nature. Further, to get the amplitude, phase, etc. of the impedance, we have to use the Smith chart. So in this block diagram or in this explanation, you will understand only about the nature of impedance of the load which is used. Okay. So by using a slotted line, as I already told, we could measure the VSWR, we could measure Vmax, Vminimum, etc. Okay, so if we are going to keep here say unknown load, this is obviously a setup of a test bench, a microwave source attenuator. Obviously there should be isolator, okay, a slotted line, unknown load, etc. And here we are having the crystal detector connected to the power meter from the slotted line. Okay, so obviously if we are connecting unknown load, there will be a mismatch of impedance and then there will be reflections from the load. Obviously these reflection from the load, so there is a incident wave and there is reflected wave from the load, it is going to set in a VSWR pattern. So by using the slotted line we could note down the values for say Vmax, Vminimum, etc. So this is our first setup, okay, by which we are going to measure the impedance. Okay, we will see how this block diagram is changed or what is a section which is changed in the next step. Now in the next step, instead of a load, we are going to keep a shorted termination. Okay, so now in the first setup, we are moving the load and we are going to keep here a shorted termination. And then again we are going to note down the values for Vmax, Vminimum, etc. That is, we are going to see what is our VSWR. And we will see the shift of the Vminimum. Okay, so if the V minimum is shifted to the left, then the impedance is inductive, and if the V minimum is shifted to the right, the impedance is capacitive in nature. You will better understand this point by looking at the next figure. So this is our first pattern which we obtained for our VSWR by noting the values of say Vmax, Vminimum. This is a first setup in which we have connected a unknown load whose impedance is to be measured. Okay. So in the second setup, instead of this unknown load, we have placed a shorted termination and then we observe the pattern for VSWR. Now if the shift of the V minimum from the first setup has shifted in such a way that it is moving to the left side, it indicates that the unknown impedance is of inductive nature. If the V minimum shift is towards the right, it indicates that the impedance is of capacitive nature. So we have to observe what is the shift in V minimum, whether it is towards the right or towards the left. So what we understand from this is that we only get the nature of impedance, whether it is an inductive impedance or whether it is a capacitive impedance. So by using this information further with the help of Smith chart only, you can actually calculate the magnitude or the angle of the impedance. So the unknown impedance can be obtained by usual methods using the data recorded and the Smith chart. What data we have recorded it? We have recorded here whether the impedance is of capacitive nature or whether the impedance is of inductive nature. Then go for the Smith chart and find out the magnitude and phase of impedance. So this is how we do the setup for measurement of impedance. We understand about the nature of the impedance. Now second method which we are going to measure the impedance is by using a reflectometer. Now unlike the other method, this method gives only the magnitude of impedance. In earlier method we know about the nature of impedance, but by using Smith chart along with it you could find both the magnitude as well as the phase. But here by using the reflectometer at the end you will get only the magnitude of impedance. So we have to see the setup by using the reflectometer. Here we use two directional couplers which are identical in nature except their direction of powers. They are used to sample the incident power and reflected power from the load. So one we use at the input side, another we use at the load side. They are the similar directional couplers. The magnitude of reflection coefficient can be directly obtained on the reflectometer, from which impedance can be calculated. So why we are employing the reflectometer here is that we could directly get the magnitude of reflection coefficient, from which we will calculate the impedance of the microwave. So this is a setup which we are going to employ to find out the unknown load impedance. So the unknown load is placed here. So here this is again a microwave bench setup. We are having a microwave source and then here an attenuator to be in the readable form for the power, and we are using two similar directional couplers, but one is used to couple the input power and other one the reflected power which is coming from the load. Obviously reflection will be coming from the load side, that is why here arrow is put on PR here. So these directional couplers, there will be no interference, okay, and this is the incident power and reflected power which is further going on detector and the reflectometer, which is going to give us a value of the reflection coefficient. Now by using these standard relations between the S and rho or between the rho and Z, we could finally understand about the values of VSWR and impedance. So here our unknown load impedance is at the end side, that is the unknown load, and ZG is the known wave impedance. So by using a reflectometer with the help of two identical directional couplers also, it is possible to calculate the magnitude of impedance. So due to directional properties of directional coupler, there will be no interference between forward and reverse waves. The input power is kept to a low level by means of pad, that is an attenuator. So the output will be in readable form. So by adjusting the attenuator or moving it along the waveguide, we could keep the input power low. Accuracy will be greater at low VSWR, that is when reflections will be minimum. Okay, so by now we have understood about how to measure microwave frequency and microwave impedance. We have seen certain techniques by which we could do microwave measurements.